We are live. Hello, everybody. We are so excited to have you tuning into the Career Chronicles, whether that's live or whether that's viewing the recording. Happy to have you join us today. I am super excited to have my friend Jodi on the podcast, and I'm going to read her official bio here in a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about how we know each other as well. But before we dig into that, I wanted to just quickly introduce the Career Chronicles again and tell you a little bit about myself and why I host the podcast. So I have been in tech recruiting for a few years now, and often hear from hiring managers that they want to hire more women. And I love that. I want to support women and help them find job opportunities. But a lot of times there are barriers that are unique to women, that get in the way of either being recruited or retained by organizations. So that is the purpose behind the podcast, is to have conversations with women and learn from their experiences so that hopefully organizations can do a better job recruiting and retaining women in tech, but across all industries. Today's topic is specifically going to be talking about preparing for maternity leave. This is on my brain because I had my daughter last year and spent a lot of time preparing to head out on maternity leave, learned a lot from that experience. Jodi is welcoming a baby boy very, very soon. So this is top of mind for her as well. And there's a lot of things that you don't think about till you're going through it. And so we just want to kind of enlighten folks on that. Anybody here who's watching live, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Looks like Luke is here. He's excited for this conversation. I know there's a lot that can be learned from Jodi and from others in the chat. Jodi and I talked about how we want this to be interactive. We want other women to share their thoughts for how they prepped for maternity leave or what's on their mind as they get close to heading out. And any parents, honestly, any folks who are heading out on parental leave, we want to hear from you about this topic. So that's a little bit behind the podcast in today's episode. I'm going to introduce Jodi. She is a client success business manager at Homecare Homebase. She has a Bachelor of Arts from Vanderbilt University, where we met each other. She went on to serve as a program coordinator for a nonprofit after graduation. And then from there, she went on to become a faculty assistant for the Olin Business School at Washington University. While she was there, she completed their certificate in data analytics and kickstarted her career in tech. We are going to talk a little bit about how she did that. I know that's not directly related to the maternity leave piece, but I think there's a lot to be learned about her path to tech. And now her daily goals include encouraging teammates and family and fostering inclusive, equitable, and diverse communities, which is, a lot of what I care about as well and the heart behind this podcast. So she is a perfect guest. She is expecting her first child, a baby boy, in May. And we're so excited to have you, Jodi. Excited to have you on here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Sloan. And thank you all, you and Spyglass Partners, for the podcast. It's been already so awesome to listen to, and I'm grateful to be here. So.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning into the other episodes. And thank you for pointing out, I forgot to mention Spyglass Partners as our sponsor. They have supported us in having these podcasts, and they've been great conversations so far. I'm sure today will be no different. I don't know, Jodi, if you want to kick us off just by explaining to the folks how we know each other. How did we meet?
Well, it's one of those things where I had to ask you because I couldn't remember like an exact moment. But you were one of those familiar faces that it's like endearing to think of you. And and I feel like that's almost a special category in certain phases of life where I don't remember if it was a hallway or I think you had mentioned, but it's just, we've had a lot of interaction that was organic over time. So
yeah, I agree. I don't remember the exact moment we met, but I don't remember not knowing you. So it's like you just kind of were always part of my college experience. So we went to Vanderbilt together. And I know that you just are always one of those fond people that I remember from college years. And we did a service trip to Colorado together for spring break. 2013, I think, was the year. So we've known each other over a decade, and now you live in Colorado, which is crazy, full circle.
Yeah, just an hour north of where we were. So
yeah, that's awesome. And tell us a little bit about how you got into tech. I think this is a super important story to share, and so I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about it.
No, I appreciate you asking, and I like talking about it because I think like you'd mentioned, I worked with a nonprofit and I'd been excited about working with them after school. And then we ended up moving for my husband to go to grad school. So I moved into the university space. And I think that's where you were for a time
Yeah.
too. My understanding of it was pretty rose-colored at first. I was like, I'll get to be around students all the time. This will be amazing. I'll move up the ranks. And then I found that the main roadblock was more education. It seemed like either I needed to work there for like 10 years or get an advanced degree.
Have a master's.
Yeah. And I honestly, I think that made me kind of not angry. I just was like, well, I don't know if I really want to spend more time and money in school. And so I pursued a lot of different avenues, tried to get, again, was grateful to be at the university, but didn't know exactly what felt like the right path. And then funny enough, at the end of 2019, two big things happened. I was on a Zoom support call. So I didn't realize it was like before Zoom was really a thing.
You were ahead of the trends on Zoom.
There was this professor who's a little older, but she was always good with the tech. And so she had me try to set up some Zoom interviews probably. And it wasn't working. So I got on a call with the support tech and he did some magic like code. Who knows? He was probably just looking at call logs, but he was like, oh, I see what happened. I was like, this guy's probably in his house, didn't have to leave to go
in
to
his pajamas.
Yeah, I was like, that sounds awesome. Okay. So that was like a little seed planted. And then right within the same time period, I went to a Tableau workshop and just my mind was blown. So
loved it.
It was like so pretty. And I could somehow tell myself I was an art history major. So I was supposed to interpret and observe images. And so, data analytics fits right in. So I did still pursue more school, but it was through a boot camp. So felt a little more reasonable. Still felt like a big leap. And that was January 2020. So pretty soon after
we all inconspicuous time of everybody's lives.
If anybody gets like sensory memory during that time, we went to remote, and then I don't know, I learned, it's funny too because I ended up learning a lot more data science than I was really prepared for, but we still touched on Tableau. And once I was a couple months into the program, pretty ready. I was like, all right, I'm learning so much. I'm sure I'm ready for a new job. And I got on the phone with a recruiter, actually a friend from Vandy, and it was her mom. She's in Colorado as well. Her name's Linda White. And I was like, all right, Linda, I didn't really mean it. I didn't say it like, get me a job. But I was like, we're having a conversation. You're looking at my LinkedIn. What's my next step? Which to me reasonably was get a job. And to her, it was look at everybody on LinkedIn, get as many connections as you can, and have as many interviews as you can with people who are in tech, just trying to ask them questions and learn what they do. And so I was a little disappointed because that felt like a much longer journey.
This is the news I have to deliver to people as a recruiter all the time. Me and Linda are on the same page.
Like, you don't have the key, like ready, you don't have it.
Yeah.
It was super helpful because what I ended up doing is talking to a professor of entrepreneurship at WashU, and he kind of planted the seed of looking at startups, because this idea of like, they're taking a chance on you, you're taking a chance on them, since they are, it's just like maybe a nice entry point. And I talked to a friend named Matt Mosley, and what ended up happening is I got my first job at a startup based out of St. Louis, and it was a blast. And then about a year and change ago, Matt Mosley called me up and was like, hey, are you looking for a job? And I wasn't necessarily, but I was a bit ready for a change, just to kind of see what a corporate job would look like. So, and Matt ended up recruiting his cousin, his wife, and me to the same role they were filling. So it's been a blast.
I love it. Well, I don't want to get too personal too soon, but I know I'll share my experience first too on the job hunt, and knowing that one day I would want to have kids. I did have that in the back of my mind when I was job hunting. I guess after I was leaving the university side of things, kind of like you were, I knew I want to be fully remote so that I can, have the flexibility that I want to be able to give to my future kids and my family. Was that on your mind at all as you were job hunting? Because I want to see if that's a shared experience for women and parents in general.
It's funny because I don't even think I asked about the parental leave policies. So I don't know if it was top of mind, but
So maybe not.
I do think I think there was a sense of the stability and hope that
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this sense of at a startup there can be really good boundaries, and it really depends on the company. But there can also be this all hands on deck mentality. That can be true of both.
Yeah.
So I
Sure.
think I was just hopeful that maybe moving into a larger company, there might be a little
More structure.
and there are there can be different benefits too. It's really interesting now to kind of outweigh the benefits of both, especially with like long-term planning in mind. I think actually at WashU there was a professor that talked about there might be more benefits over time at a corporate company. So I think that was more what was in mind, but maybe not as specific as what does it look like to be a parent at this company. So
was wanting a remote job, and I know you wanted, to move into tech and find a job where you could work remotely, like the Zoom tech support guy. Was that a thought at all of like, if I'm remote, I'm going to have more flexibility to become a parent?
Yeah, certainly. And I have there have been a few seasons where I've gotten a little lonely. I'm more extroverted than I might admit. But I think that especially just seeing that it was possible, you can schedule your meetings. You don't have to, if you're in an office and then you have to jump out, that there's some commuting there versus just being able to plan your life around where you work from home. So definitely think that came to mind. And actually, as I think of it, one thing that's just I wonder if it's a question on people's mind is if I'm in an interview cycle, if I'm in an interview process, when would I even ask, like, what are the parental leave possibilities?
I know.
Like, am I self-disclosing too much to them that they might, not want to hire me if they know I want to be a parent? Or I've thought about that some.
And you bring it up too, because as a recruiter, and of course, as a recruiter in tech, I unfortunately more often work with male candidates because it seems to be a male dominated field. And that's part of why I want to do the podcast, is to get more women represented. But the only candidates I have had ask me about a company's parental leave policies have been men. And so I've noticed that men feel comfortable asking about it, whereas I feel like women don't necessarily feel comfortable disclosing it. And I have talked to candidates who are women who are currently pregnant, and, it's not they're like, I don't know that I can change jobs right now. I don't even know how I would interview and say, I'm going to be going on maternity leave in 3 months. And it's an interesting situation for sure. I don't have the right answer. But I can tell you that I think there are concerns about disclosing that.
Yeah. I know I don't necessarily have an answer either. It's just it's like I think part of me was curious if that's a shared experience. So it sounds like it is.
It definitely is. I definitely felt like I was under pressure to I want to find a remote job before I get pregnant, be there for a little while so that I don't immediately say, by the way, I'm pregnant. Like, I wanted to spend some time learning that new job. And it's like, these are life things that you just can't plan out. Like you can't have everything planned out to a T. I'd certainly try to, but that's just not realistic. Luke said, kudos to the men that are asking, though. Absolutely. And I was always pleasantly surprised by the men that would ask and would say things to me like, the reason I'm asking is because I want to be an equal contributor at home when, we have kids and bring them home. And I want to make sure that I can be a hands-on parent. And there are just still so many companies that don't offer paternity leave. They only offer maternity leave. And that's something that I would like to see more of. Because I know when there's not paternity leave, the mom becomes the default parent so often because she's the one that gets time off work. She has to go to all the appointments, and the husband might not be able to go with her to learn that knowledge. So then it's like, well, you went to the appointment, so you handle all the tasks that came back from that appointment. So there's a big part of that for sure. Joseph said, no matter how much you plan, kids will derail that plan. Joseph has 5 kids, so he certainly is a veteran expert. Don't scare Jodi on her first kid, Joseph.
I am one of 5 though, so.
Oh, hey, love big families. Yeah, you can't plan everything. but I definitely think these are shared experiences. For those of us who knew we wanted kids, I think we tried to piece the puzzle together. And I'm sure right now you're trying to piece together the puzzle of what maternity leave is going to look like. Do you want to walk us through what are some of the first concerns or things you're trying to plan for?
Yeah, I think I've said this enough to my manager. I didn't realize I joked about it a lot. I was like, for my customers, don't let them go falling in love with like my
Yeah.
replacements.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't control that. They're great. So, but I think I've, in the back of my mind, just, it'll be interesting to know that they kind of have someone else filling in that role. But the main thing is just this interesting balance of sharing the load as much as I can now while still knowing that I will be out. So, and not overwhelming my team with notes, and I don't want to make more work for them, even if they're just filling in my role. So thankfully we have a pretty structured role. It's like a quarterly review with customers. So it's month by month. You can prep and take those calls. So I feel like I have a lot of runway to give them, a lot of information I can give my team, and then a lot of notice for my customers as well. So I think, just kind of balancing that I've left enough information so they're prepared, and not made it so that it's tedious for them to have to pick up for me. So
it's almost like you're offboarding and onboarding all in one. Like you still have to do your job right now, all of the responsibilities that come with that, but then you also have to have an exit plan for yourself, to make sure all the loose ends are tied up, and then identify what can be passed off, and what is the coverage plan for that. And then you discuss that with the people that need to be clued in. And you've probably had additional meetings to prep them on certain things that they're going to be taking over. So it's almost like two jobs in one, when you're preparing for maternity leave. And I don't know that people think about that.
And it's interesting with, there are certain cases where you might book an induction, or medically you can, plan for a baby, but there's also a lot when you're getting after like 24 weeks, you can't really plan, and you can be
don't have a clue.
So, that's an interest. I keep thinking, like, can I at least make it to this date? Can I at least have everything ready up to a certain point? So
Luke said this is why companies should embrace temp replacements. Bring in that temporary solid person that isn't planning to take the role over full time. Absolutely. Yeah. Temp replacements can be a great strategy to supporting your employees who are taking parental leave. I know, like you said, Jodi, I don't think I fully understood that it can happen at any point. I thought there would be a little bit of like heads up, but my daughter came 5 weeks early. And so I had kind of started to feel like I need to be making this plan. And I'm like you, we're proactive planners. So we had laid out who was going to be taking over what, and you want to be ready at any moment. But I had just a weird, sixth sense that day that I actually went into labor that night, and I had started emailing all my HR people that day saying, here's my plan for maternity leave. And they responded, you can't take maternity leave until your baby is born. And I was like, okay, I understand. And then that night I was like, by the way, I'm at the hospital now. So this baby's coming. So I let you know earlier today. And I just somehow had a sixth sense about it. But you just have to over prepare almost as soon as you announce your pregnancy. You kind of start planning with your coworkers of what this is going to look like. And you have to do a lot of that gentle reminding in meetings when people are like, Jodi, can you take this? And you're like, of course, but just so you remember, I'm going to be on maternity leave, so I might not be able to carry that task through to the end. Something else you mentioned that I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you're commission-based at all in your role, but you talked about passing off your clients to your coworkers. And in recruiting, I had a similar concern or fear that, I would lose my pipeline of candidates that I was passing off to other people. And then you lose out on all those weeks to drive new candidates. So there is commission lost. Is that a concern that you had at all about, or a concern you have at all about how to pick up the business when you come back?
Thankfully, that's not part of
your structure,
but that sounds extra stressful for sure. And I think we'd mentioned, like solo business owners or people that they're in roles that just depending on your role, there might be added stress, or there might be,
Yeah.
it's not just like I can leave it, someone will take it and
pick it back up again.
Yeah. So, how did you mentally prepare for that stress?
Yeah. You're the first podcast guest to turn it back on me. I love it. So I don't know that I'm mentally prepared for it. I think I definitely had people on my team that I trusted. Joseph was one of them. He's tuned in the comments. So I passed a lot of folks off to him, if I remember correctly. And I knew that they would do whatever it takes to, if we can close a deal with one of my candidates, I was still going to get credit for bringing that candidate into our pipeline. So I trusted that system. And then I just had to kind of release some of the control of so my maternity leave was going to be 16 weeks. So that was 16 weeks lost of active recruiting. And what I can tell you about recruiting is it takes a week or so to build a solid stream of candidates. So you're trying to message X number of candidates daily that'll result in X number of calls daily. A certain number of those candidates will be a fit for the role, and it snowballs. So the more you send out messages, the more you're going to be talking to. But if you take 16 weeks off, you got to start from scratch. All those people that you talked to before, they're off the job market, most likely.
Yeah.
This year is not really that kind of a fast market, but back in 2022 and early 2023, it was. So I just had to be okay with it. I had to just tell myself that my priority now is bringing my daughter into the world and being the best parent I can be. And I've had to lean into that post-maternity leave too, of just reminding myself that she's my priority. Of course, I want to be great at my job. And I think I am great at my job. But at the end of the day, if I feel like I wasn't able to give my job 100%, I got to give my daughter 100%. And so that's what I just had to remind myself, is that maternity leave was there for a reason. And that it was okay if I took a little bit of a hit on commission.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful.
It's hard, easier said than done, for sure. There were tears shed, there was stress, there was budgeting, there was financial planning involved. It's a lot. So I don't want to downplay it and make it sound like it's that simple just to tell yourself those messages, because it is a lot to juggle. I'm curious, are there any other things that you're thinking about besides preparing for your maternity leave, but things you're thinking about from returning from maternity leave? Because I know that was on my mind too.
Yeah. Also, I think what you said, that's at least a framework, having some mental preparation there. I think that because I get to have the baby right around the summer, part of me is thought that it just might be difficult to come back. And it might be harder than I once thought. You have a child and you get to bond, yay. And then you create a new routine. I think that I'm just really curious if I'll be itching to come back, or if it'll be a little more emotionally difficult than I thought. But actually, in hearing you, I think you've said a couple of times that you have this almost renewed focus and drive. So there's a part of me that's hoping, I can tell myself that's what I want. I guess I'll just have to kind of balance what is reality. I think a little bit too, anytime there's in software, sometimes things move fast, sometimes things move slow. But if I'm not paying attention now at my role, I can miss out on announcements, or I can miss out on tweaks to the product. So I think just really doing my due diligence to understand what is new and be able to talk knowledgeably, so that I'm not trying to make up for lost time over the summer. I don't even think I'd realized that was something I hadn't thought about that much until you asked. So
I hadn't thought about that either, about how to catch up on updates while you're out. Alejandro said, I never thought about how much maternity leave can impact earning potential when you're commission based. Absolutely. And I know that my previous company initiated a policy that would give women, or any parent, I think they had a parental leave policy. So it would give parents a percentage of their earned commission averaged out over the previous year. So if they earned X amount of dollars in commission the 6 months prior to their parental leave, they'd get a portion of that average during their parental leave. So you're still going to get some commission, just not as much as you probably would if you were actively working. But there are solutions like that organizations can put into place to support parents. Is there anything
incentivized then to earn more. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a funny time because I think that's an interesting balance to some. Depending on how you feel during pregnancy, you might not feel like a big go-getter, but you might. Like
second trimester is the time to be a go-getter,
yeah,
right?
it's true. You got that glow. So.
The first trimester is nap time and spend a lot of time throwing up. But second trimester was, I feel great. I am here to crush the workday. But yeah, that's such a good point that there are policies that companies can put into place that support people, but actually benefit everybody and actually can create better performers. I think there's this incorrect assumption that the more benefits and safeguards you put into place for people, the more they'll take advantage of it. I know people get nervous about unlimited PTO policies. Like, will everybody just take PTO all the time and never get any work done? But I think we've proven time and time again that people want to show up. They want to do well. They want to hit their goals. And when there's commission involved, of course, they want to earn more money. So those policies can actually be super helpful for everybody and drive productivity rather than the opposite.
Yeah, totally agree.
Is there anything your company's doing that you are particularly appreciative of that's helping you in the transition?
Yeah, well, they do have a dependent care. There's like an FSA, and then there's
the
also
flexible spending plan. Yeah.
There's like just a straight up reimbursement. So we even with our, what was it? The deposit for the daycare, we already can get a reimbursement from that.
Oh, nice.
So that was huge and something I'd never thought about before. But thankful to be taking advantage of those benefits soon enough. I would also say it's not so much, I don't know how intentional this was in terms of hiring, but there were 3 women on our team last year who had children, and everybody was so appreciative, excited for them, supportive, and then it created an atmosphere where I didn't feel at all afraid to, be the next baby. So, and my manager too has been overly thoughtful. She's been very accommodating and helpful in terms of creating that plan. So I think part of it is just the people in the community wanting us to be parents, not just to be employees. So
yeah, wanting you to be whole people, whatever that entails. That's what we've had that common theme in the podcast of like your direct supervisor can make a world of difference in your, success and happiness in a job and your retention. And so sometimes if there are managers listening to this podcast, you do not have to overhaul the policies of your organization. Sometimes a lot of that's out of your control, but just by being a decent human being and caring and supporting for your employees, that's really all you need to do.
Agreed. Ask how we're doing. Yeah. And
ask how we're doing, literally, and check in, ask if we need a nap, if we need a nap break. My manager encourages me to take naps when I need them with a sleeping, a sleepless infant sometimes. And you need that when you're pregnant too, for sure. Totally. Well, we're coming close to time. I want to make sure I get to ask you, when or where have you felt most empowered as a woman?
Yeah, I was excited about this. I think 2 moments kind of stand out. When I worked at the startup I worked at, it was called Balto, after the sled dog. And
Balto.
We had a ladies group, it was called Ladies at Balto Software. And I think joining one of those first meetings, I was like, I'm in it. I'm here. Like,
I did it.
I'm a woman in tech. And I think it was just, that's going to mean so much for different people. And I think you've already proven that with this podcast. So that was just special to reflect on that and to feel, it just felt like a special kind of milestone. And then I also think just what I was saying with seeing other moms function in their roles here, I think it's felt so much more doable. That's just, my mom was not, working at a software company. She was busy doing it. She had a different type of job. And so I think being able to see it lived out and there be whole people, women who are dedicated as mothers and can tell you all about their children, but also are super knowledgeable in their role and super proficient. That has been really empowering to kind of look to them to where I want to be. So
I love that and echo that. And something you said that I just want to point out is the the piece of when you made it to that women in tech group at Balto, there is something really powerful in taking a moment to look around and recognize when you've hit one of your goals. I think we're such a fast-paced society that you're like, on to the next thing, got to keep it moving. You graduate from this degree. Okay, now I get a job. Okay, now I want my next job. And we don't ever stop and be like, oh my gosh, I'm living the things that I once dreamed about. And that's helped me in motherhood a lot too, of like, when it is stressful, I have to pause, and my husband will be like, we have our perfect daughter, and you know, we have each other, and it's amazing. And so when the days get stressful, I just have to remind myself, I have everything that I dreamed about having when I was, you know, 20, 25, whatever it was. So I think that's good that you took a moment to do that at Balto. And I encourage you to do it as you step into motherhood. I'm excited for you. It's going to be great. You're going to have to come back on the podcast when you return from maternity leave. I want to hear all about it.
You can ask the baby all sorts of questions. And
yes, bring the baby on. I would love that. The first baby podcast guest. That would spike attendance sky high.
I mean, they wouldn't say much, but you know.
He'll be cute. That's all that matters. He might spit up. I'll tell you that. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Jodi, for joining us. We're excited to have you. It was this great conversation. Would love for people to continue this convo in the comments. Would love to hear from other folks who are preparing for parental leave or have come back from it. We want to continue that conversation because I think it's an important one to have. So Jodi and I will keep an eye on the comments and interact with you guys there. See you guys next time.